What's up, guys? John Stargarian here, and I want to talk briefly about my play on Greg Hardy against Yorgan De Castro. So if you like the video, please drop a like and subscribe. And so I've played Hardy for 3 units at minus 175 here, and I think it's a pretty good spot for him. To me, this fight's pretty straightforward. I cap Hardy like around 72%, somewhere in that vicinity, and so I think there's pretty good value at the current line. And to me, like when I look at this fight, it's just I struggle to see where De Castro can really find an edge. So De Castro's getting a bunch of hype because he knocked out Alton Meeks on the regional scene via leg kicks, and he knocked out Justin Tafa via a one-punch KO in his first UFC fight. Or sorry, he knocked out Meeks in the Contender Series. But if you actually like take a step back and look at his whole career, like it's not like super pretty. Like I get that he's been kickboxing since he was 18. But you don't see a whole lot of technical acumen outside of his leg kicks, which are very strong. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot you see in his regional fights or his amateur fights that's, overly impressive. His technical stand-up's not great. He mostly just wings hooks. And then he'll throw leg kicks, I said, which are good. But he can't really wrestle. His clinch game is okay, but it relies on brute force more than anything else. And, he has a tendency to overextend on his striking a bit too, which I think could be very problematic here. And if you actually go back and look, he actually went 2-4 in amateur MMA. Now that's a pretty rough record. And then he came in regionally and he fought basically no one of any repute on the regional scene. And so he basically stomped his way to a fight with Alton Meeks on the Contender Series where he went off as a plus 600 dog. And he won that fight impressively by leg kicks. But we didn't really learn much from it or learn whether he'd evolved at all because basically all Meeks had was attempting takedowns, and when he was able to get up, he just kicked him until he collapsed. And then in his next fight, we didn't learn much either. Tafa was backing him up to the fence, and then literally sprinted shin first into a right hook. And while the KO is a highlight reel KO to be sure, it's one that pretty much anybody in the division, if they land that shot, probably put Tafa out, given how exposed he was on the shot. And so I haven't seen anything in those 2 fights that make me think he has an edge here. And like I said, he's amateur, he wasn't very good as an amateur. I mean, you look at his regional tape, I saw a couple fights where he was getting tagged up by absolute cans, like pretty easily. Now he was durable enough to like walk through that damage and eventually finish those fights himself. But, that's concerning. And what's more is I haven't seen really much of an adjustment to his game. And so on the other side of the octagon, we have Greg Hardy. And Hardy, obviously everybody knows the backstory, former NFL player, all-pro, incredible athlete. And he basically came in as a brawler, and we've seen him basically improve every single fight. And his last fight, he took on Alexander Volkov, who's a top 5 heavyweight in the UFC. And he lost, but he was competitive there. And so we've seen constant evolution. He went from being a brawler to now adding a jab, adding a leg kick, showing he can circle, showing that athleticism. There were questions about his cardio with the Sasoli fight because he took the inhaler, but without an inhaler in Russia on short notice, he went 15 minutes with Volkov and didn't look gassed for it. So again, not a huge concern for me. And so ultimately, like when I look at Hardy's game, like I said, it has evolved. When you watch the Sasoli fight, it showed me he can stick to a game plan with relative consistency. He basically stayed on the outside and just pumped his jab, used leg kicks, and just kept Sasoli off of him for 15 minutes. Didn't need to recklessly engage. And I sort of think he can do the same here. So like Ben Sasoli, not a great fighter, but Sasoli's got some tools. He's actually got decent boxing. The problem is he's too small for the division. And he actually, in some respects, reminds me of De Castro. De Castro is only 5'11" and 185 pounds, or 265 pounds. But it's very short. He's not a big fit for the division and probably should be fighting at a lower weight class, if we're being honest. And, while Sasoli's probably a better boxer than him, he obviously has the leg kick thing to fall back on and, the past kickboxing career. But they're similar to me because neither guy, De Castro's a better athlete, but neither guy really has, the physical tools to really compete with the elite in this division. And now, look, I'm not saying Hardy's elite. He's obviously very raw, but he's on the exact other side of the spectrum, whereas, De Castro's athletic, but being 5'11" with only 74-inch reach at heavyweight, it's just a tough ask against most guys. And, Hardy is more athletic. So, like, De Castro relies like a ton on his speed and athleticism to get into position where he can land leg kicks and get out without getting hit. And, Hardy, like I said, more athletic. I think he might even be faster than De Castro. And as I mentioned, Hardy throws a lot of straight punches, a lot of 1s and 2s. And given, De Castro has a tendency to come into the pocket and only really wing hooks, and he can overextend a lot, I think Hardy's going to be able to hit him clean pretty much at will this fight. And so, I look at it and I just kind of see, De Castro may be more aggressive than he was in the Sassoli fight. But I'm not sure because we saw him get backed up by Meeks, who, again, is a wrestler. But we also saw him get backed. Now, the Tafa fight was only 2.5 minutes. But we saw Tafa back him up a bit. And I've actually seen him get backed up on the regional scene, too. So I'm not convinced he's just going to get in Hardy's face and, confuse him and make him make a mistake. And, if he... And frankly, that might be his best path, even though I think if he clinches up with Hardy or gets in tight into a brawl, I think he's likely to lose that as well. But if he doesn't do that, I think Hardy's going to be able to just keep distance and just touch him at will from the outside for 15 minutes, maybe finish him on a counter if he comes in too hard. And like I said, if he does come in for a brawl with Hardy, first of all, like I said, Hardy showed both in the Volkov fight and the Sassoli fight, he's not just a brawler anymore. He'll use feints and movement and kicks and jabs to kind of create space for himself and look to set up his shots. So I don't think Hardy's just going to oblige him and trade shot for shot with him. So that's number one. Number two, if that's what happens, like I said, he's going to be able to hit on the counter. And while people have kind of been putting down Hardy's power, which is kind of an oddity, he doesn't have Francis power, but he's got real power. You can see the impact he lands with. I'd say he's got plus power. And if Yorgan's coming in there and just swinging at him recklessly, I think Hardy's going to be able to just to tag him over and over again and have a good chance to put him out. Now, look, obviously Yorgan could land one of those reckless shots and knock out Hardy. I'm not saying he couldn't. It's heavyweight. These fights are very high variance, but he'll be there to be hit. And I think Hardy is just a little quicker and he's a little quicker on the counter. And ultimately, if Yorgan tries to clinch him up or grapple him against the fence, like I said, Yorgan's clinch game relies mostly on brute force, and I think Hardy can out brute force him there too. And so ultimately, I just struggle to see, where De Castro has an advantage. He's got great leg kicks, but, Hardy's actually a pretty good leg kicker too. And, I don't think De Castro's going to be able to give a kick without taking one or taking a right down the middle. And so it's just, I think Hardy's got the physical advantages. I think he's got the athleticism advantage, which De Castro does lean on a lot. I think his hands, even though De Castro was a professional kickboxer, I actually think Hardy's hands are more educated, and I think Hardy's a lot better at keeping space and at moving his head and avoiding big shots. And so, look, De Castro could win this fight. He could go in there and knock him out, or maybe he lands a leg kick that cripples Hardy. But, we saw Hardy deal with a lot of leg kicks from Volkov and take a lot of damage in that fight and not really ever look close to being finished. So between the two, and on the other side, De Castro finished as an amateur. So it's I just trust Hardy's durability more. He went 3 rounds with Alex Volkov in Russia and came out having had a competitive fight and not getting finished. De Castro could win this fight. He could knock him out. He could land a big right hook. But even though Hardy's raw, I think he has every physical tool to win this fight. And since I've seen him show the ability to stick to a game plan, I'm inclined to believe he'll probably have the same game plan here and just kind of use his range and just pick apart De Castro. And so, I'd cap it at, Hardy around, minus 250 to minus 270 range. You could play him here at minus 200, minus 210. I wouldn't play him for more than a unit and a half. But, I have 3 units at minus 175. And so that's my feeling. I think Hardy's going to cruise here, probably to a decision. But like I said, if De Castro gets aggressive, I think Hardy could put him out. And so my pick's going to be Hardy by decision. And hope you enjoyed the video. If you like it, please follow me and drop a like. And, if you have any comments or questions, drop them in the comment section. If you want to disagree with me, fine. Hit me up on Twitter at MMA Fox. That's FAWKES. I'm always down for a conversation about fights. And one other thing, I am going to be on Wednesday going live with GK, the fight analyst, and you can find him on Twitter at Fight Analysts with an S at the end, to discuss DraftKings for this upcoming card. And on Friday, I'm going to be going on live with him and a couple other guys to discuss, just the betting breakdown of the card. Follow me on Twitter if you want, or follow GK on Twitter if you want to see those updates or watch that live stream. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Follow me or fade me, and let's have fun this weekend. Bye.